디렉터님은 미국의 뉴스 미디어인 복스 미디어에서 멀티미디어 프로듀서로 일을 시작하셨고요. 현재는 아트 디렉터로 복스의 비디오 팀을 이끌고 계십니다. 이전에는 모션 디자이너로서 뮤직비디오, 또 광고, 그리고 뮤지컬 등 다양한 분야에서 작업을 하셨다고 하시는데요. 오늘 디렉터님께서 발표해 주실 주제는 복스의 임무라는 주제입니다. 다시 한번 큰 박수 부탁드릴게요.
안녕하세요. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties. There we go. All right. I want to introduce myself first. My name is Dion Lee, and I'm the art director for VOX.com. VOX.com is a news digital website based in New York and DC in United States, where we cover politics, science, culture, and many other things. But we're mostly known for our explainer style. So we didn't invent explainers, but it really became this effective way to inform the public because now there's so much information coming out in this new digital age, but there's not enough context around them. So if the old way of explaining was for people who didn't really care enough about the topic, the way we try to kind of approach explainers is they're for people who want to learn and want to know more about this topic. So I'm the art director for the VOX video team, so I'm going to be focusing more on video. I'm responsible for everything visual, mainly for our YouTube channel. So I have three big responsibilities for the team, which is first, I create a lot of the style guides for our shows. I give visual feedback for every video, making sure that all the data and animation, they all make sense, they look good, and I manage all the motion designers for the team. So our YouTube channel, we make these bite-sized videos that kind of run to 4 to 5 minutes, and hopefully we give you an answer to like a question that we throw out there. And we've been around since 2014, and we didn't really have like an established way for people to find us. But YouTube was a great place to start because 94% of 18 to 24-year-olds in the US use YouTube, as do many other countries. And like a lot of social platforms, YouTube kind of rewards extreme behavior, and that doesn't mean that journalists really have to resort to these ridiculous stunts. But it does mean that a lot of people have more options, like Professor Stephanie has said before, and we really need to think more carefully about how we're keeping their attention. And we do that by giving people context or reason to kind of stay with us early on in the video. So when you watch a VOX video, most of them will kind of start off with why you should continue to watch her videos.
The people of Hong Kong are out in the streets.
呢個遊行對香港嘅未來可以話係歷史性嘅一刻咯，係香港。
Hundreds of thousands are demonstrating against a deeply unpopular bill.
呢個會影響全香港嘅市民。
因為呢條條例對香港嘅傷害係非常之大嘅。
But this is about a whole lot more than a bill. It's about the status of Hong Kong and the power China has over it. It's a fight to preserve the freedoms people have here, and it all started with a murder.
This is a 20-minute VHS tape about a Lego character called Jack Stone. When it came out in 2001, it was the first real computer-animated Lego movie. But it hasn't aged that well.
Incredible! Fantastic!
13 years later, the Lego movie looked like this. Let's watch that again. This is 2001.
There you have it.
And this is 2014.
Yes, that's me.
That is a huge difference. Here's how they made it happen.
English is your first language, though, you might be more familiar with a different joke.
Supplies!
That's the notion that East Asians mix up their R's and L's in English.
How about
It's a running gag in Lost in Translation, an Oscar-winning film about two Americans who are sad in Japan.
Rat pack, you know rat pack? Rat pack?
Rat pack.
The movie makes communication with the locals seem hopeless.
Lick my stocking. Hey, lick them.
And at one point, Scarlett Johansson's character asks,
Why do they switch the R's and the L's here?
For yucks.
this movie might be a bit rude, but it's not a terrible question to ask, because if you're genuinely curious, a foreign accent gives us a chance to learn something about another language.
So these were some intros of some of our videos. So the first video, we were giving you context around like, hey, this huge thing is happening in Hong Kong. And we kind of go to the logo and then we kind of give you the explanation afterwards. For the Lego movie piece, we're kind of showing you a visual comparison, right? So like in 2001, Lego movie looked ridiculous. Now it looks amazing, so what happened there? So we're kind of giving you a reason for you to kind of, that you would be curious for what the answer might be. So the third video is more of like a curiosity bait where the producer is kind of posing a question that she kind of was curious about our accents, which is a fair question. So when we talk about what makes a good explainer at VOX, we talk about context. An explainer should really give you the necessary information to kind of understand a story. So instead of focusing on what happened, there we go, we want to answer why something happened. And because I'm the art director, I would like to focus on more of our visual strategy around the content that we make. But first, I'm gonna tell you a little story. This is me on my 23rd birthday. I didn't have a job yet, so I look extremely happy. So this is my first workstation after I did get hired. And for the first couple of years of my career, my work week went something like this. So I get a script from a writer or a producer, and sometimes from someone who's not part of the video team. And I read the script, and I think, how do I visualize this? It's an argument about human self-indulgence paired with perceived indifference to suffering. I really wish that the translator would do this justice. Because if you really think about that, that's not a visual sentence. But I'm 23. I don't want to go back to the writer and tell her, hey, your writing doesn't work for video. So I kind of stick with it. I push through. I somehow figure it out. And the video goes up. And unfortunately, this is how a lot of places still work. Someone writes the script, and another person makes it, and there's no interaction in between. But the problem with the system is that video is a combination of auditory and visual information. And if those two things don't work together, it's not going to make for a great video. So at VOX, we really try to pay attention to the way that our words kind of interact with visuals. So this is how we write our scripts. As you can see, on one side is what we hear, and on the other is what you see. From the beginning, we're really focused on what you're seeing and hearing at every moment. This also kind of refrains us from overloading our audience with too much information, because we work with a lot of data. So by writing our script this way, we're able to tell when we're giving our audience a lot of visual information versus auditory information. So I'm going to kind of walk you through how we turned the script into a video. It was a story about Boeing 737 MAX, and it was when it crashed in Ethiopia this March, or after. And it was at a point where this specific plane had a few other problems, and people were really trying to figure out why this thing happened. So I worked on this video with producer Alvin Chang, who wrote the piece, and I animated and edited the piece with another producer, Kim Moss. So you could say that Alvin took care of the words, and I took care of the visuals.
This is an airplane engine. It's sitting in a field in Bishoftu, Ethiopia, part of the wreckage of Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, which crashed on March 10th, 2019. 157 people died. This was just a few months after another flight, Lion Air 610, crashed in Indonesia and killed 189 people. These two flights were operating the same plane, the Boeing 737 MAX 8. And its engine is the key to understanding why this particular plane has caused so many problems. But there's nothing actually wrong with this engine. In fact, airplane manufacturers raced to put them on their new planes. That's where the problem started.
So that was the intro. Because we're working in video, the first 3 seconds is extremely critical. That's when people kind of decide if they want to keep watching or click away. And you might notice that we're not starting with the newest information, but we're starting with the most visual information. And that also means that we won't do every story. We'll do the stories with a lot of visual aids already attached to that. And here, we're giving you context around why you should stick around. You know, these planes are crashing, all these people died, what's going on? Another thing that I think is extremely important when we're talking about video is that we have to convey tone very early on. Are you supposed to be mad at this? Are you supposed to be sad about this? People won't remember all the information that you give to them, but they will remember how they felt about a certain video or a story that they heard. So I think this is extremely important.
The two biggest airplane manufacturers in the world are Airbus and Boeing, and they have a fierce rivalry. If one of them can offer a better plane, the other could lose a lot of money. That's exactly what was about to happen in 2010. Airbus announced that they would update their most popular model, the A320, a single-aisle airplane that services many domestic flights. You've probably been on one. For this new plane, Airbus had a big update. It would have a new kind of engine. It was much larger than the previous engine, but it would make the plane 15% more fuel efficient. And just as importantly, this upgrade wouldn't change the plane that much. A pilot could walk into the new model with little additional training and be on their way. It was called the A320neo, and it would save airlines a lot of money. This was a problem for Boeing.
So same thing here. We are using a lot of visual hierarchy to make sure that people are getting the information that they need and nothing like more. It's a nice comparison. It's easy to understand. It helps people to understand things a lot quicker. And here we're kind of using imagery that people are familiar with, like the red dollar signs leaving, Boeing's losing money, right? And this is something that UI, UX website designers do all the time. They use a lot of imagery, color, and icon to kind of navigate people through a page. Like, for example, when you see this, you know that this is bad, and this is good. Because when you see red, you sense danger, you know it's negative, you kind of know how it feels because it's kind of ingrained in our DNA. And the thing is that we don't have to explain this to people. People already know it, people already understand it. If I show it to people, they just know what it means immediately. So we want to trigger that like fast thinking as many times as possible in our videos because we have a limited amount of time to kind of convey a ton of information. So example here from a different video.
Companies whose wires and towers we use to access the internet can't block or slow down data from certain sites or apps. They can't make special deals to move certain data along faster than everybody else's. Internet content providers like Facebook, Google, and Netflix, they love net neutrality.
So same thing here. All the images that you know all the logos, you know what it means. And because of that, we are able to kind of convey that information very quickly to people. Going back to Boeing now.
To compete with Airbus, Boeing's obvious move was to upgrade the engine on their single-aisle plane, the 737. But there was one issue. Here's a sketch of the 737 next to the Airbus A320. Notice how the 737 is lower to the ground than the A320. This meant Airbus could slide a new engine under the wing of their A320, but there wasn't enough room under the wing of the Boeing 737.
So same thing here, very visual comparison. You understand very quickly what's going on.
Their solution was to move up the engine on the wing so that it would be slightly higher, and it would fit on their 737s. Here's a promotional video of that updated 737 in the air. You can actually see that the top of the engine is above the wing. Boeing called this model the 737 MAX. And just like Airbus with the A320, Boeing said that their new plane was so similar to its predecessor that pilots would only need minimal additional training.
So this is something that we do a lot. Actually, if you think about how your eyes work, our actual focus of like how much we can see at a time is very narrow. So kind of putting the visual information in close proximity to each other is very important. We do this a lot at VOX. Different examples
and
here.
see how the tail on the Y and G forces the whole line to be longer?
Some states, like New Mexico and Rhode Island, have provided money for new machines.
They include both the mixed traffic of shared space and the raised street textures and button-activated crosswalks that disabled users are used to.
So by circling, highlighting, pointing, we're being a very active visual guide when you're watching a video so that people don't really have to work to understand the information. They know where to look. Oh, okay, I have to talk here. Thought it was a video. So for this example, you notice that we used the actual image of the Boeing instead of the illustration. So we kind of built this visual narrative with the illustration by showing you the actual plane, like this is real, it's really happening. And the same thing here, kind of guiding people's eyes with all these visual aids so that people can understand what's going on. It really goes to our design aesthetic. We use very simple design to kind of narrow down viewers' focus. So there aren't that many things to kind of look at. We're not using decorative design for the same reason. We really want the data and the information to be the focus. Back again.
Moving the engine up on the 737 had a side effect. When the 737 MAX was in full thrust, like during takeoff, the nose tended to point too far upward, which could lead to a stall. This was a problem because these planes were supposed to behave exactly like the old ones.
So when I was researching on how to kind of visualize that section, there was a lot of information that I had to get through, and I didn't understand the degrees and like the certain language that they use around to describe this. But I realized that all people had to know was if it was dangerous or not. So kind of by kind of focusing all the information in the necessary parts that people need to understand, I was able to convey that very quickly and then just kind of move on.
In 2018, several American pilots complained to the federal government that the 737 MAX was suddenly nosing down. On October 29, 2018, Lion Air Flight 610 took off from Jakarta. In the flight report, which shows the plane's altitude over time, you can see that the plane was in full thrust during takeoff. But at a certain point, the nose of the plane kept lurching downward. The pilots couldn't figure out why this was happening. The captain asked the first officer to check the quick reference handbook. They couldn't find the solution. The pilots continued to fight with the MCAS. The plane struggled to gain altitude. Reports show it was likely because the computer was getting incorrect sensor data, pushing the plane toward the Earth below. 12 minutes after takeoff, the plane crashed into the Java Sea.
So we're doing the same thing here, really pointing things out to you. We taught you how to read the map before we actually showed it to you, so people understand what's going on. We're guiding you through the chart, the map. And for the reason why we chose to have the map there is because that was kind of like the emotional anchor for this story. So like if we just showed you the chart, it wouldn't have been as effective or powerful. So this bottom part acts as more of like the visual narrative of the story, and the top part is the information that we're giving you. And we do this a lot. A visual narrative is very important. People understand information through stories. So it's really important for us to kind of always have a visual story with the information that we're giving them. Ooh. So more examples on that.
That's my wife, and she's pregnant. When you have a baby, there are a lot of costs to consider.
Car seat and a bassinet, baby carrier, a thermometer.
Wait, but how much is like the actual hospital birth gonna cost?
The 70% number comes from two economists who are interested in a concept called optimal tax theory. And it starts with a simple question. How can we tax people so that all citizens are as well off as possible? And we can understand this concept by looking at two potato farmers, a very rich one and a poor one.
So we're doing that visual narrative here, right? So the first story is about how the US healthcare system works. But you have this pregnant wife of the producer who's kind of taking you through this journey. So it kind of sticks to your brain a little better because there is a person, there's a visual person kind of guiding you through that. The second video is about a very boring topic, which is optimal tax theory. But we're following these two potato farmers, and you kind of get to live how it really works in real life, and you kind of see this visual thing play out. So it's a little bit easier to understand. It makes it entertaining. So this video did really well for us. It has over 8 million views on YouTube. But this is the number that we're more proud of, which is the retention rate of how long people watched this video. So this video is about 6 minutes long, and people watched, or on average, people watched 4 minutes of it, which is amazing. So we did this by kind of answering the important question, posing a question, and then satisfying you with an answer at the end. We were giving people context around why they should care and really trying to deliver on that. But also we pulled this off by working really well together, kind of bridging the gap between the writer and the maker. So the thing that I really want to emphasize is that if you're a designer and you work for a media company, really learn how to write, learn how to research, really learn the material that you're working with. Like when I work on a video, I always do my own research to understand what I'm making. And if you don't understand something, ask the writer, ask the producer. It's their job. It's their job to help you understand what they've kind of, reported on. And the same thing goes for journalists. If you want to work in video, learn how to edit videos, learn some design principles, really learn how to communicate with your creatives, because those are the people that you're going to be working with. And also the important way that a journalist can work with an animator. One of our producers, Liz, she works with a lot of editors and animators, and she always storyboards all of her stories that she's writing. And this is an extremely important step, especially because she's based in Ohio, and a lot of the animators work in New York. And this, really should be a conversation because you're making this thing with another person, but it really is the producer's responsibility to provide a starting point. Because you can't just hand over a script and say, hey, make this pretty. It's really her job to help understand the material well enough to describe it into this a visual universe. And she uses the animators as proxy for audience. If she doesn't get it, no one else is going to either. So by doing all of these visual strategies, we really gained a lot of subscribers. We're close to 7 million subscribers on YouTube. And Our retention rate on average for the channel is about 3 minutes and 58 seconds, which is pretty long. And this really helps us negotiate deals with our partners, like our Netflix series Explained, which really took on what we really did on our YouTube side and took it into a bigger platform. And same goes for YouTube Originals show, where we kind of get to reach more people, try out different formats. And with that, hopefully we're able to help even more people better understand the world around them. Thank you. Whoop.